Camp Emerald Lake had always been a cherished retreat for kids looking to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. Nestled deep within the woods of northern Maine, the camp offered a serene lake, rustic cabins, and a plethora of activities designed to foster friendships and outdoor skills. The summer of 2024 was no different, with laughter echoing through the trees and splashes from the lake filling the air. The first week of camp was filled with the usual excitement. The children participated in canoeing, archery, and hiking, while the evenings were reserved for campfires, ghost stories, and s'mores. The camp director, Mrs. Lang, a kind-hearted woman with a no-nonsense attitude, ensured that everything ran smoothly. The head counselor, Jake Thompson, a rugged outdoorsman in his early 30s with a deep love for nature, was particularly attentive to the kids, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. However, the joy was short-lived. Within a week, whispers of unease began to spread among the campers and counselors. It started with the disappearance of little Emily Parker. She was last seen by the lake, collecting rocks for her cabin's nature project. When the dinner bell rang and Emily didn't show up, the counselors initially thought she had lost track of time. But as the sun set and darkness enveloped the camp, worry began to set in. The entire camp mobilized to search for her. Flashlights flickered through the trees as the counselors called out her name. The local authorities were notified, and they joined the search with sniffer dogs and drones. Despite exhaustive searches by the camp staff and local authorities, no trace of her was found. Her disappearance was initially brushed off as a tragic accident. Perhaps she wandered too far into the woods and got lost, or maybe she slipped and fell into the lake, though divers found nothing. The atmosphere at Camp Emerald Lake grew tense. Parents were called, and some campers were taken home early, their parents unwilling to risk their children's safety. The counselors tried to maintain a calm facade, but even they couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread. Mrs. Lang increased security measures, setting strict curfews and organizing buddy systems for all activities. Despite these precautions, an air of unease lingered. But when two more campers, Jason and Mia, vanished in a similar fashion, the camp's atmosphere shifted from one of summer fun to one of palpable fear. Jason, an adventurous boy with a penchant for exploring, was last seen heading towards the lake with his fishing rod. Mia, a shy girl who loved to sketch, had been sitting by the dock drawing the tranquil scenery. Both disappeared without a trace, their belongings left behind as if they had simply evaporated. Panic gripped the camp. The remaining children were kept indoors, their activities restricted to supervised indoor games and crafts. Parents demanded answers, and some threatened to shut the camp down. Mrs. Lang, desperate to keep the camp open and ensure the safety of her charges, doubled the search efforts and hired additional security. Jake Thompson, who had taken the disappearances particularly hard, spent every waking moment searching for clues. He had always prided himself on being able to protect the campers, and the thought that something sinister was happening under his watch was unbearable. He scoured the campgrounds, combed through the dense forest, and even took to patrolling the lake at night. But despite his best efforts, he found nothing but more questions. The campfire stories that had once been a source of delight now took on a darker tone. Whispers of a malevolent force lurking in the lake began to circulate among the campers, adding to the already mounting fear. The counselors dismissed these as mere rumors, but deep down, they too began to wonder if there was something more to the disappearances than met the eye. As the days turned into weeks, the the sense of impending doom grew stronger. The once vibrant Camp Emerald Lake was now shrouded in a thick fog of fear and uncertainty, the laughter and joy replaced by hushed conversations and anxious glances. The idyllic summer retreat had become a place of nightmares, and everyone was left wondering who or what would be next. Jake Thompson, the head counselor, was a rugged outdoorsman with a deep love for nature and a protective instinct for his campers. Determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances, he became increasingly obsessed, spending nights patrolling the campgrounds and days meticulously combing through the forest and the lake's perimeter. His dedication was driven by guilt and an unwavering commitment to the safety of the children under his care. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lake, Jake decided to explore a section of the shoreline that had been overlooked. The fading light painted the water in hues of orange and purple, creating a serene yet eerie atmosphere. Jake's footsteps were the only sounds, crunching on the gravel as he walked along the water's edge. As he moved closer to the lake, he noticed something peculiar. Near the water's edge, he found a series of deep, irregular grooves in the mud, almost like claw marks. He knelt down, tracing the lines with his fingers. The marks were wide and deep, unlike anything he had seen before. They looked almost like the tracks of a large, powerful creature. Jake's heart raced as he considered the implications. Determined to gather more evidence, Jake borrowed a small rowboat and ventured out onto the lake. The water was still, the surface like glass. As he rowed to the center, he noticed the water growing unnaturally dark and murky. An unsettling feeling crept over him, as if he were being watched from below. He leaned over the edge, peering into the depths. Just as he was about to dismiss his fears as imagination, something large and shadowy moved beneath the surface. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The shape was massive, gliding effortlessly through the water. He could feel its presence, an ancient, malevolent force staring back at him from the abyss. Panic set in as the boat rocked slightly from the creature's movement. He quickly rowed back to shore, his mind racing with what he had just witnessed. Back on solid ground, Jake tried to rationalize what he had seen. His thoughts drifted to the local legends he had heard over the years, stories of a monstrous creature that inhabited the lake, preying on those who ventured too close. He had always dismissed them as campfire tales, but now he wasn't so sure. Jake returned to the camp with a newfound sense of urgency. He gathered the remaining counselors and shared his discovery. His revelation was met with a mix of skepticism and fear. "Are you sure about this, Jake?" asked Sarah, a fellow counselor. "It sounds unbelievable." "I know it sounds crazy," Jake replied, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "But I saw something out there, something big. And those marks on the shore, they're not from any animal we know of." The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Despite their doubts, they trusted Jake's judgment. They had all seen the toll the disappearances had taken on him, and they knew he wouldn't fabricate something like this. "So, what do we do?" asked Mark, another counselor. "We need to get proof," Jake said. "If we can document what's out there, maybe we can figure out a way to stop it." Armed with cameras and flashlights, Jake and a small group of counselors returned to the lake that night. They set up equipment along the shore, hoping to capture any signs of the creature. Hours passed in tense silence, the only sounds being the gentle lapping of the water and the occasional rustle of leaves. Just as they were about to call it a night, the water near the center of the lake began to ripple violently. The counselors tensed, their flashlights trained on the disturbance. The creature had returned. Jake's heart pounded as he watched the shadowy form glide beneath the surface just out of reach. Suddenly, the creature broke the surface, its massive head emerging from the water. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, an ancient serpentine beast with scales that shimmered in the moonlight and eyes that glowed with an eerie, predatory light. The counselors stared in stunned silence, their cameras capturing every detail. The creature let out a low, guttural roar before disappearing back into the depths. The lake returned to its tranquil state, as if nothing had happened. The counselors exchanged horrified looks, the reality of their situation sinking in. They had proof of the creature's existence, but now they faced an even greater challenge: how to stop it before it claimed any more lives. Jake knew they couldn't keep this discovery to themselves. They needed help, and they needed it fast. He made the difficult decision to contact the authorities and share what they had found. The safety of the remaining campers depended on it. As he dialed the number, he couldn't shake the feeling that their battle against the creature was just beginning. Armed with the harrowing footage of the creature, Jake Thompson and the counselors faced a daunting task: convincing the authorities of the imminent danger and devising a plan to capture the beast before it claimed any more lives. The local sheriff, initially skeptical, was swayed by the undeniable evidence captured on the cameras. He agreed to assist, but with a limited understanding of what they were truly up against, the burden of planning fell heavily on Jake's shoulders. Using what little resources they had, Jake and the counselors devised a daring and dangerous plan. They would rig a large, reinforced fishing net between two sturdy boats and lure the creature into a trap. The hope was that the net would entangle the beast long enough for them to drag it to shore, where it could be contained or killed. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. The counselors worked tirelessly, fortifying the net with steel cables and attaching it to the boats. They knew the creature was immensely strong, and their trap had to withstand its thrashing. The bait, a large slab of raw meat, was chosen to attract the creature from the depths. Jake could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, knowing that any misstep could result in more lives lost. That night, under the cover of darkness, the counselors launched the boats and set the trap. The air was thick with tension as they silently maneuvered the boats into position, securing the net in the middle of the lake. The camp's floodlights illuminated the water, casting an eerie glow over the scene. The remaining campers were kept in their cabins, unaware of the perilous operation taking place. Jake took his place on the shore, ready to coordinate the operation. He held a flare gun in one hand, a last-ditch effort to distract or disorient the creature if things went wrong. Hours passed in tense silence, the counselors straining their ears for any sign of movement. The stillness of the night was oppressive, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Suddenly, the water near the bait began to ripple violently. The counselors tensed, gripping the ropes tightly. The creature had taken the bait. With a surge of adrenaline, they pulled on the ropes, drawing the net closed. The lake erupted in chaos as the creature thrashed against the net, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlit water. The beast's strength was beyond anything they had anticipated, It fought with a ferocity that sent waves crashing against the boats, threatening to capsize them. The counselors struggled to hold the ropes, their muscles straining under the immense force. Jake shouted orders, trying to maintain control of the operation. "Hold it steady! Don't let it break free!" he yelled, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of splashing water and guttural roars. The net strained and groaned under the pressure, the steel cables creaking ominously. The counselors were losing their grip, their hands raw and bleeding from the rough ropes. Jake knew they couldn't hold the creature for long. Desperation set in as he realized they needed to act fast. "Bring it to shore!" he shouted, his voice filled with urgency. The counselors redoubled their efforts, pulling the net towards the shore with every ounce of strength they had left. The creature's thrashing grew more violent as it neared the shallows, sensing its impending capture. The floodlights flickered, casting eerie shadows over the chaotic scene. Just as they were about to drag the beast onto the shore, a deafening roar echoed across the lake. The creature lunged with renewed vigor, snapping the steel cables like twine. The net tore apart, and the beast surged towards the counselors, its massive form towering over them. Panic erupted as the counselors scrambled to get away. Jake fired the flare gun, the bright light momentarily disorienting the creature. It roared in anger, its eyes glowing with an unearthly light. The counselors ran for their lives, the plan in ruins and the creature still at large. Jake's mind raced as he tried to think of a new strategy. They couldn't outmuscle the creature, and it was clear that conventional traps wouldn't hold it. As he regrouped with the counselors, he realized they needed to lure the beast into a more secure and contained environment, something it couldn't easily escape from. "Listen up," he called out, gathering the exhausted and frightened counselors. "We need to think bigger. We're not going to catch this thing with nets and ropes. We need to trap it somewhere it can't get out." "But how?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "It's too strong." "We need to use the environment to our advantage," Jake said, his mind racing. "There's an old boathouse at the far end of the lake. It's made of concrete and steel. If we can lure it inside and lock it in, we might stand a chance." The counselors exchanged uneasy glances but nodded in agreement. It was a risky plan, but it was their best shot. They quickly formulated a new strategy, determined to end the nightmare that had plagued Camp Emerald Lake. With the creature still at large and the plan in ruins, Jake and the counselors regrouped, adrenaline and fear coursing through their veins. The creature had proven to be more formidable than they anticipated, but they couldn't afford to back down now. The lives of the remaining campers depended on them. "We need to use the boathouse," Jake reiterated, his eyes scanning the anxious faces of his fellow counselors. "It's the only place strong enough to contain this thing." The boathouse, a relic from the camp's early days, was a sturdy structure made of concrete and steel, originally built to withstand the harsh weather conditions of northern Maine. Over the years, it had been repurposed for storage, but its robust construction remained intact. If they could lure the creature inside and seal it off, they might be able to buy themselves some time to figure out a permanent solution. "Here's the plan," Jake continued. "We'll use the boats to guide it towards the boathouse. Once it's inside, we'll lock the doors and barricade the entrance. Mark and Sarah, you'll take the first boat and lead the creature towards the entrance. The rest of us will be ready to close the doors as soon as it's inside." The counselors nodded, determination mingling with fear in their eyes. They had no other choice but to follow Jake's plan. They quickly gathered the necessary supplies, ropes, flashlights, and a heavy-duty padlock for the boathouse doors. As they set out towards the lake, the air was thick with tension and the scent of impending danger. Mark and Sarah took the first boat, rowing towards the center of the lake with the slab of raw meat as bait. The rest of the counselors, including Jake, positioned themselves around the boathouse, ready to spring into action. The night was eerily silent, the only sounds being the gentle lapping of the water and the occasional rustle of leaves. Minutes passed like hours as Mark and Sarah waited for the creature to take the bait. Suddenly, the water around their boat began to ripple violently. The creature was approaching. Sarah's grip tightened on the oars as she and Mark slowly rowed towards the boathouse, the creature following closely behind. Jake watched from the shore, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature's massive form glided through the water, its eyes glowing with a predatory light. As it neared the boathouse, Jake signaled to the others to prepare the doors. The tension was palpable as they waited for the right moment. Mark and Sarah rowed the boat towards the entrance of the boathouse, their movements slow and deliberate. The creature followed, its massive head breaking the surface of the water. With a final push, they guided the boat inside, the creature lunging after the bait. "Now!" Jake shouted. The counselors sprang into action, slamming the heavy steel doors shut and securing them with the padlock. The creature roared in anger, its massive form thrashing against the walls of the boathouse. The ground trembled under the force of its fury, but the concrete and steel held firm. For a moment, it seemed like they had succeeded. The creature was contained, its roars echoing through the night. But as the counselors caught their breath, a new problem arose. The creature's thrashing grew more violent, and the walls of the boathouse began to crack under the pressure. "We need to reinforce the walls!" Jake shouted, his mind racing for a solution. "Get anything you can find, wood, metal, anything to strengthen the structure." The counselors scattered, gathering whatever materials they could find to reinforce the boathouse. They worked frantically, nailing boards and welding metal plates to the exterior, trying to buy themselves more time. But the creature's strength was overwhelming, and the cracks continued to spread. As the situation grew more dire, Jake realized that their efforts might not be enough. They needed to think of something else, and fast. Desperation fueled his thoughts, and a grim idea began to form in his mind. "Everyone, back away from the boathouse," he ordered. "I have an idea, but it's risky." The counselors hesitated but complied, retreating to a safe distance. Jake grabbed a can of gasoline and began dousing the perimeter of the boathouse. His plan was dangerous, but it was the only way to ensure the creature wouldn't escape. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling with fear. "We need to destroy it," Jake replied, his voice steady. "If we can't contain it, we have to eliminate it. This is the only way." The counselors watched in stunned silence as Jake finished his preparations. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. With a flick of his lighter, he ignited the gasoline, and flames quickly engulfed the boathouse. The creature's roars grew louder as the fire spread, the heat intensifying with each passing second. The counselors stood back, the flames casting eerie shadows on their faces. The boathouse burned fiercely, the creature's thrashing growing weaker as the fire consumed it. Just as it seemed the creature might be defeated, a final desperate roar echoed from the boathouse. With a tremendous crash, the structure gave way, the creature breaking free from the inferno. It was badly injured, its scales charred and its movements sluggish, but it was still alive. Jake's heart sank as the creature emerged from the flames, its eyes filled with a malevolent rage. He knew what he had to do. Grabbing the flare gun, he aimed it at the creature and fired. The flare struck the beast, igniting it once more. The creature roared in agony, its massive form collapsing into the water. The lake hissed and steamed as the creature's body sank beneath the surface, the flames finally extinguished. The counselors watched in silence, their hearts heavy with the realization of what they had just endured. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the counselors surveyed the smoldering remains of the boathouse. The nightmare was over, but the cost had been high. The camp would never be the same, and the memories of that fateful night would haunt them forever. Camp Emerald Lake was abandoned, left to nature and the dark secrets that lurked beneath its tranquil surface. The legend of the creature in the lake grew, a chilling reminder of the summer when the idyllic camp became a place of nightmares.